Hi there, and thanks for joining me. Now, I always love this time of the year as I get to get out all my Christmas decorations, including a lot of the decorations I've made over the years. And one of my favourite makes are these lovely ribbon wreaths. Really, really easy to make, yet so effective. Now, most of them I've made for Christmas time, but I also made one for Easter too. And you can just about see there's little yellow chicks on this one, although they do like to hide behind all the ribbon. Now, some of these ribbon wreaths as well, I've used the sort of wired ribbon with, and it gives quite a different effect, as I'm sure you'll agree. So you've got just a normal ribbon with no wire in it, so it gives a lovely sort of floppy effect. And then you can use the wired ribbon, which is harder on the fingers, obviously, but it gives a much different effect. And they tend to be quite glittery, the wired ribbon, don't they? So they give a lovely glittery effect. So say the wired ribbon is this sort of ribbon where you've got the wire on the edges of each ribbon piece. You can see I've got two different size wreaths here. So this one here is a 12-inch, 30-centimetre wreath, and these smaller ones are 8 inches or 20 centimetres across. They're really easy to make. I say, first of all, you get a florist wreath, one of these wired florist wreaths. You can pick them up from most craft stores, or florists will often sell them as well. Now, I did try and make a ribbon wreath with just one hoop rather than the double hoops, and you didn't quite get the fullness that you do with the two hoops. So these are quite nice. You actually got two hoops there, and you tie the ribbon onto both rings of the hoops to give that really full effect. And so easy to make, really easy to make. You just get a load of ribbon, cut it into about 6-inch strips for the smaller wreaths and 8-inch strips for the larger wreaths. I just discovered that the larger wreaths, you can get away with a longer ribbon because you've got more space in the middle for the ribbons to fall into. With the smaller wreaths, I found that if you use the 8-inch ribbon, it just sort of filled up the middle and you couldn't see the middle of the wreath very well. So what I thought I'd do today is I'll make another 8-inch ribbon wreath with you on video. I found out lots of my ribbon that was in my ribbon stash, and I found out the ones that look more Christmassy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all this ribbon into sort of 6-inch strips. It doesn't have to be precise, it's just a rough 6 inches. And then we'll get to tying them on the ribbon wreath. So I won't bore you with watching me cut all the ribbon into 6-inch strips, because it's going to take a little while, and I'll come back once I've got a pile of ribbon ready to tie on. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I'm back and I've cut all my ribbon into 6-inch strips. I should say roughly 6-inch strips. I'm not actually very good at measuring things when I do things like this. So I start off measuring maybe the first two, then I get bored and some of them end up very tiny. Obviously that might be the end of a roll rather than one I've actually cut. But even still, sometimes you can just make up the fullness of the wreath, so it doesn't really matter. So it's not an exact science, and especially when you're working on ones like this where you've got sort of hanging bits of the ribbon, it doesn't really matter what sort of length they are, and if any is too long, you can always just snip them off at the end. Now what I've done here is I've actually just used up all the bits and pieces of ribbon that I had in my ribbon stash. Like many crafters out there, I'm sure you've got lots of ribbon in your ribbon stash. I mean, I certainly do. And I never ever pay full price for ribbon. I always buy them in the sales. Usually the January sales used to be quite good for that sort of thing, but they've been less good over the last few years, what with COVID and what have you. But I tend to only pick them up at discount price, or a lot of people give me ribbon. So we've got a bit of a mixture of colours here, but I think it's going to make quite an effective wreath. So what we'll do is we'll start tying the pieces of ribbon onto here. Now, literally, you just tie the ribbon on. Now, when I first started making these ribbon wreaths, look at that one. That's not 6 inches, is it? Let's have a look and see how long that one is. Oh yeah, that's more like, oh, what's that? 7.5 inches. That's what I'm like. So when I first started making these ribbon wreaths, I sort of experimented with doing double knots on the ribbon so they didn't fall off so much. Now, when you do double knots, I found that all you could see was just the knot of the ribbon rather than the ribbon itself. So what I do is I just do one single knot on the ribbon pieces. Now that does mean that every Christmas you end up having to like retie pieces of ribbon onto your ribbon wreaths because a few of them fall off. But I just sort of think that's part of the novelty of having a ribbon wreath in the house. You don't get that problem with the ones that got the wire in them. They don't tend to move around. But some of these ribbons can be very silky and they sort of work their way loose. But I still just tie one on and you just get the fun of almost remaking a ribbon wreath every Christmas. I mean, it's not that bad. You might lose, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 pieces from each wreath every year. So you just go and tie them back on again. So that's it. So I just get the pieces and I just start tying them on to the metal wreath I've got here. And you just literally tie them on, and it's as simple as that. And it's a good idea to try and spread your colours out a little bit so that you end up with them sort of spread around the wreath. Otherwise you'll just have, you know, a little batch of like gold in one area and another batch of silver in another. So I tend to just sort of spread them about a little bit. And it's just so effective. The effect it makes, it really is. I mean, it's so simple to make. Ideal hobby for the children. If you've got children that are old enough that they can tie simple little knots, ideal little hobby for them. You know, cut out a load of ribbon. They can either do that if they're old enough, or you can do it for them. And then they just tie the pieces on. And I really love these wreaths. I made loads of these. You know what it's like. You get like obsessed with making things, don't you? You just sit there and you make loads one Christmas. And then you think, oh, I can't make any more. I've given them away to everybody I know. And I filled my house with loads of ribbon wreaths. So that will probably be enough for now. And then you put it away to one side. But that's what's so lovely doing these videos, is you get to share all your wonderful hobbies with everybody else. And I think they are rather effective. Whoop. A bit fiddly, of course, you know. You're just looking at tying and tying. I would normally do this in front of the TV, where I could be watching TV when I did something like this. I do love the effect they give, and I mean, you could decorate them with other bits and pieces as well. If you've got any decorations you wanted to put on, you could do that as well. So at the end, you could sort of put, like I have with the chicken one for Easter, you could put your own decorations on the wreaths as well. I don't tend to do that, but you could. I mean, I did with the Easter one, chicks on there. But I guess you could put your own decorations on there. You could glitter it up, whatever takes your fancy, really. That's what I love about crafting. It's your imagination. You're only limited by what you fancy doing, really, aren't you? And if you fancy the look of them when they've got shorter ribbon on them, just cut your ribbon shorter. If you like the long, sort of floppy look, then cut it a bit longer. Sometimes they look quite good if you mix up the thickness of the ribbon as well. I'm not sure I've got any here where I've done that with. No, I haven't actually, but I have got some where I've actually put some thick ribbon on, as well as all the thin ribbon, and that looks quite nice. I'll see if I can find those in a bit. That bit there, it's not actually fabric ribbon, it's sort of, well, I guess it's like curling ribbon actually, but I think it's too nice for curling ribbon. So actually I think that looks quite nice on there, so hopefully that'll work as well. And I won't make you sit through me doing the whole of this wreath, because that's going to take quite a while. But maybe we'll just do a little section and then we'll come back to it later. Or perhaps I might even be able to speed it up. That might work quite well, wouldn't it? Speeding it up so you can see it being come to life, but in a much quicker fashion than what I'm working at the moment. I think that one's even too short to tie on, so. But I won't throw any little pieces like that away, because they're always very useful, especially when you're working in the miniature world. So if I'm ever doing anything on my doll's housing, it's really handy having little tiny pieces of ribbon, isn't it? So you can make like little belts or the bows for your doll's hair and things like that, or decorations for the crib. A whole variety of things, really, isn't it? You know, always handy to keep everything, really. So most of this is Christmas ribbon, but I've got a few other bits and pieces as well. And hopefully it should work quite well together. So I've also got some thick ribbon here as well, so I thought I'd use that and see whether or not it works on the piece. Sometimes it can be a little bit overpowering to use a thick piece amongst all the thin pieces of ribbon, but other times it works quite effectively. So we'll give it a go and see how it looks. I'll make a judgment on that near the end, I think, once we got all the other pieces on, and then I can see whether or not it's going to work. So hopefully you can see the effect of what we're doing here. We're gradually just building it up. So it does take quite a lot of ribbon. I mean, I don't know how many pieces I've tied on there. What do you reckon that is? 20 odd pieces, maybe 30. So it takes quite a bit of ribbon, but you can see it's beginning to build up. And you just carry on building and building until you get to a nice full effect like this. So what I'm going to do is I should stop talking there, stop boring you, and I should carry on tying my bits of ribbon on. I'll also find the wreath that's got the thick pieces of ribbon on it too, so we can have a look at that. And then we'll maybe speed that a little bit up so you can sort of see me tie them on, but I won't be doing it real time with you. And then I'll catch up with you at the end once I'm all done. Okay? Well, as you can see, I've nearly finished the wreath. Still got a little bit more to do on this side. You can see it's a little bit less full on this side because I haven't quite finished that, but it's really beginning to fill out, isn't it? And because then I just used ribbons in my stash and didn't buy anything special, I think it's turning out rather lovely. Now, one thing to mention when you do use these metal wreaths, and I don't know if this is the same with all metal wreaths, it certainly has been all the ones I've bought so far, is you have a very rough bit of metal where the two pieces join up, so the two ends of the metal join up. Do be careful with your fingers on that. It's really easy to cut yourself on those that appear. And also you have the spikes that come down across the two pieces of the metal as well. And it's worth being aware of those as well because they often have sharp bits on them. So I'm just going to finish off this last bit of my wreath. Still got a few more pieces to add on to here. Now, when you're making a wreath, some of the colours you'll find are more dominant than others. Like, for instance, on mine, the dark blue is quite a dominant colour. So what I've done is I've made sure that I've sort of spread my dark blue evenly throughout the wreath so you don't sort of end up with clumps of it. So it's always worth having a little look to see if you've got a colour that your eye is just instantly drawn to. Because if you have, you're going to want to just make sure they're spread out nicely. Now at this stage it actually gets really fiddly because you can't see what you're doing. There's just ribbon everywhere. And I say what I tend to do is I sort of pull the ribbon across like that. Yeah, so I can actually get to the wreath underneath. But you have to be careful doing that because of those spiky bits. It's really easy to sort of catch your fingers on those. Now, this is the first time I've used curling ribbon on a wreath, and actually I think it's turned out quite nice. It's quite surprising. I thought it might be a bit of a silly idea, but it's so sparkly and so pretty. I thought I'll give it a go. And it's actually turned out okay. Now, it does unravel a little bit easier than the other wreaths, so you might be better off putting a double knot in it, perhaps. But I only put one knot in mine. I thought I'll see how I get on with it. And if it all starts falling out, I'll put another knot into it. The sort of sparkly, lacy ones I've got as well, those pieces of ribbon that look like this, they're quite dominant as well, surprisingly, probably because they've got a slightly different pattern, your eye is drawn to them. And I'm very nearly finished. And then it's a case of just eyeballing the wreath in general to make sure that you are happy with the way it looks, trimming off any bits that perhaps are a bit too long, like I've got a weird end going on there, haven't I? I don't want that. That's going to be out of keeping with all the other pieces, so we'll give that a bit of a tidy up. It's always surprising how sometimes if the inside ring is less full, it makes the outside ring look like it's not full. But it's just because it gives that whole overall effect. You need both rings to give that lovely full effect. So I'm getting to the end of my ribbon that I've cut here. Now, I must admit, if I was doing this off camera, I would probably cut and tie rather than cut it all at the beginning and then tie it all at the end. I would probably cut as I went, and then sort of I'd cut a few pieces and then tie a few pieces and cut a few pieces and tie a few pieces. So I wouldn't have so much left over at the end. But because we're on camera, I thought I'd cut it all first so you don't spend most of your time watching me cutting ribbon. Yeah, this is the tricky bit here because I say this is where the join is. So I keep finding the join keeps reappearing, so I just don't have enough ribbon on that little area yet. But we'll keep on adding to it. Now, certain pieces of ribbon tie better than others. This spotty one has got a bit of a texture to it and it keeps wanting to come undone. I think that's looking quite nice. Now, obviously, I do have some bits that are a bit sticky outy, like that one there's way too long. These dark steel colour ones in the middle are a bit heavy as well, aren't they? So I'll probably trim those off. It's tricky to see from this angle, so I'll try not to chop my finger off on camera. And then to finish off, you just want to add a piece of ribbon so you can hang it. So obviously I'll cut a longer piece for this. I'm going to use this partly pink ribbon because I've got quite a bit of that. That one there's still a bit dominant, isn't it? So I'll just cut them down a little bit more. So on the empty wreath, you've got these struts here holding the two rings together. What I find works quite well is if you can find those amongst all the ribbon here, and then put your two hanging ribbons onto there. It hangs quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find where they are on my piece here and tie the ribbon onto those. You can tie it near those, but if you do, it sort of moves around a little bit. So if you actually tie it on the struts, it's quite handy because they obviously don't move. You don't need to worry about the end as well, because if the end's a bit long, it just looks like another bit of ribbon, which is quite nice. That's one side, and I'll do the same on the other side. And there we go. I'm going to call that done. So I can titivate it. I can sort of tidy it up. I could be here all day doing that, but I won't be. I shall say that's done for now. I think it's quite pretty, as I say. All just bits and pieces out of my ribbon stash. I didn't buy anything special for it. Just bits and pieces I had. Cleaning some curling ribbon, and I think they turn out rather lovely. So I hope you've enjoyed joining me on that journey while we made this ribbon wreath. And don't forget as well, I've got a Discord. So if you make a ribbon wreath or anything else, any other Christmas crafts or anything you've been up to, do join us on Discord and you can show everyone what you've been making and we can all have a chat on there. That's the trouble with YouTube. It's sort of not so easy to chat on here and you certainly can't share photos, but you can on Discord, so it's rather lovely. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well so you can see what I'm up to next. And thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.